Hello everyone, welcome again to Pluralsight Spotlight. I'm your host, Adam Gunn. If you're new to the series, let me set the table for the exciting episode we're going to bring you today. Our Spotlight series is a chance to meet some of the incredible people that differentiate the Pluralsight platform. Our brand is built on the back of incredible course authors who bring the best of themselves to the courses they create on our platform. My guest today is Julie Lerman. Julie is a software coach with over 30 years of experience building software. As a coach, Julie provides support for domain-driven design and architecture implementation and facilitates event storming workshops and domain discovery. She also provides deep dives into Entity Framework Core for her clients in the .NET world. Julie's a longtime Pluralsight author, Microsoft MVP, Docker captain. She comes to us from Vermont, and we're really excited to have her and talk more about Entity Framework Core. Welcome to the Spotlight, Julie.
Thanks, Adam. So glad to be here.
I'm excited to be here with you. I feel like I have Pluralsight royalty on the stage today. You have been a Pluralsight author for a long time. When did it begin for you?
I believe it was 2009.
Okay.
It was so 14 years ago.
And tell the audience the story of you and I talked a week or so ago, and you were a pundit, one of the preeminent voices in Entity Framework. Is that right? Angular?
Yeah, Entity Framework.
Traveling.
Yeah, Microsoft's data access. Yeah.
Traveling the world, and decided there might be something to putting your content on Pluralsight?
Yeah, well, I don't think I relayed this to you. Microsoft had actually come to me to ask me to do a series of courses on Entity Framework. And I was giving a conference, user group talk in Maine, Portland, Maine, where Fritz Onion, one of the co-founders of Pluralsight, lived. And he came to the talk, and I knew who Fritz was in the .NET community, and also from Pluralsight, their reputation. And they had just shifted from their, towards the doing courses, video courses. And he asked me essentially to do the same thing that I just contracted with Microsoft to do. So he and Microsoft kind of did a coordinated publication of that first series. Yeah. And then from then on, I've been doing a lot of, and Entity Framework. I mean, it's been amazing because Microsoft had come out with so many different data access platforms over a bunch of years. And when Entity Framework came along, the developer community was like, oh yeah, here's another one, right? And here it is. That first came out in 2008. Here it is 2023. And now we're on another iteration of it. So it has been evolving. And I have just continued along because it's always interesting to me to see what Microsoft and what the team has been doing for Entity Framework. And that, of course, leads to another course, another version.
Yeah. I want to back up even more. It's fascinating to hear Pluralsight authors talk about how they became an expert. So back up your career prior to that meeting of the minds with Fritz Onion. Like, how did Julie get on this course?
Well, I'd always been interested in data as I started programming. I came up through texts that people may not even know what they were, DBase 4, but totally data-focused development. And these were platforms that were kind of complete, but started with designing the data, right? And then kind of building applications around them. So DBase, and then FoxPro, I evolved to that. And then from that, I actually moved to Access, which is kind of funny because, Access, again, very data-driven. Start with designing the data storage and then build apps around it. And then from that, Visual Basic, right? And that's when I started, the data was a little separated, right? Visual Basic was the platform, and it also had a data platform that connected to it.
Yep.
So now they're two different things. So, that evolved VB, and that evolved to .NET, right? So I just kind of went along with that. During the .NET days, I was involved with a community called INETA, which was a big user group organization. And because I was on the board of INETA, I ended up getting to go to a lot of .NET conferences. Was very fortunate to have a champion who was running the Microsoft Developer Network, MSDN. We were at a party. She brought me over to the editor of MSDN magazine, which was like the magazine for .NET developers, published by Microsoft, part of all of MSDN. So she ran that whole org. She went to the executive editor and said, "I'd really like Julie to write an article." And I was like, "What for MSDN? I can't do, I don't know. I can't do that." But so I did. I wrote an article on ADO.NET, which was one of the earlier data access frameworks for .NET. And I wrote this big article for them. And, it just kind of all started from there. That I interacted with the team because I really wanted to make sure that I was telling the right story, I was technically accurate, et cetera. And that really started my relationship with Microsoft because they really appreciated that I cared that much, that I did that much research and made that much investment. So it's, gone along over the years. And that's what I do with every one of my courses.
I'm curious, as I hear you talk, I'm interested to know if you think that Julie Lerman recipe is modelable. As I hear you talk about the amount of staying on the cutting edge, writing articles, going to user groups, seeking mentors. Do you think the things that you experienced in that journey, young developers, young data professionals, can be inspired from? Do those things still apply today?
I would like to think so. I mean, so much of what drives that for me personally is, my curiosity, my desire to be correct. If I'm writing an article or creating a course and people are reading it and they trust me, I have to give them the right information. Everything that I write about, I test it. I check it out. I go, well, what if I do it this way? What if I do it that way? So, it comes with that personal, curiosity and drive to, be correct. And I know a lot of developers have that, and along with the computer is not allowed to win.
Yeah.
Right. But I am curious how things work, right? How I like to take them apart. I won't do that to physical things. I don't like to build computers, but when it comes to software, I'm very curious about how things work. Being able to debug through source code, I love it. I want to see the guts of what's going on so that I understand better how to control it, how to fix problems, how to understand things.
Your bio didn't say this, but if you search the interwebs, you are known as the world's top expert in entity framework.
I try to keep up with it. The team is amazing at evolving this product, at evolving entity framework, EF Core now. And it's a lot of work to keep up with it because now, .NET, all of the things within .NET, they're iterating annually now, right? So yeah, it is hard to keep up with it, but for a lot of from a lot of perspectives, I'm still a go-to person, and I love that. And I continue to be so curious about, okay, what have they done now? What kind of improvements have they made? How much better does it make the life of the developer? How much easier is it to work with? And really important for me, because I also do a lot of work with domain-driven design. So the things that we design, the way that the guidance and the patterns we have from domain-driven design are implemented in our code, I'm always looking to see how EF Core models or maps that better, how EF Core makes it easier for us to design code the way we want to, and it still can get into the database. And the team cares a lot about that also. So every time there's a new iteration, not only am I like, oh, like, what other cool things have they done? I also really want to see what have they done to make the experience of people who are following DDD guidance and practices easier.
Yeah, and my assumption, the Spider-Man line comes to mind: with great power comes great responsibility. My guess is with that title, you feel some responsibility to the community in terms of how you teach, how you instruct, and
absolutely.
the accuracy.
Not just technical accuracy, understanding what's driving the team, the NA Framework team. Why are they making the kinds of changes they are? Sometimes there might be a breaking change, like to understand that and to relay that and make sure, without being, I don't want to gloss over things or trick people, rah, but why it was important to make that, and, here's how to make your life easier when approaching that kind of a change. I do feel very responsible for making sure people have accurate information, even whether it's coming from me or somebody else. If somebody asks me about something that I don't know, and I have to Google it, I'm really careful about vetting the resources that I'm going to recommend to that person before I do that.
And as a source of skill development learning, like, my team gave me a few thoughts from some of the reviews they've read, and some of them, it seemed like there was a theme of Julie's really good at taking the complex and making it simple. I'm curious if...
That means so much to me. That's really important.
Yeah, to expand on that. Like, why, as someone who's building these courses, is that principle so important?
Well, it's really hard to keep learning new things, or whether you're, coming from one version to the next or just starting. A lot of times people who are teaching things make assumptions about what knowledge you're bringing to the table. And I have always prided myself. That's how I started speaking at conferences. I would be in a conference and, attending a talk on a topic that I was really curious about, and the speaker was making some real assumptions about my knowledge, even though it might not have been a super advanced talk. And I was like, but you didn't explain this thing. And then I would go home and I would watch the talk over and over again, that one little thing, trying to understand it. And I was like, I need to explain this to other people who think the way I think, right? So I try to, when new versions of Entity Framework or something I'm trying to figure out, and it's not always EF. When I wrote a column, a data points column for MSDM magazine for 10 years, and almost every single month for 10 years. So I wrote about a lot of different things I was curious about, as long as they were somehow related to data. So if I was curious about it, it was an excuse for me to dig into it. But what I was doing was trying to take that learning, that like initial learning curve pain. I'll take the pain, right? I'm taking one for the team. I'll do all that kind of hard work of just like, I don't understand, and experimenting and asking people and everything until you understand. And then I really try to relay it in a way like, here's how it finally, like how I got my aha moment, right? So cut through all the crazy things I had to go through to figure it out, and here's what really just made it click for me. And so that I'm trying to talk to people who think the way I think.
Yeah.
And that's the best I can do.
Yeah. I love hearing that, because I think sometimes imposter syndrome kicks in, and I don't start a Pluralsight course because I'm just afraid it's going to be too hard, or I'm going to hit a roadblock and feel dumb. And it feels like, the instructors have taken a lot of that, the brunt of that pain for us as the learner, and kind of there's hope in hearing what you say, that if you just start, you don't, the biggest thing is not to even start, but if you start the journey, you're there along the way, and have hopefully simplified the path.
There's one course that I did a bunch of years ago. I think it's retired now because the technology I used is, pretty outdated. But, here at that point, I'd already been programming for 20 or 25 years, right? And I really had, because of where I had come from, I didn't really understand automated testing, right? But I had all this experience, but when I thought about unit testing and automated testing, I'd be like, I'd feel stupid, right? And I'm like, wait a minute, I'm not stupid. I'm very experienced. I just don't know that. And so I proposed doing, I wanted to do a course. I've always referred to this as my passion course. And it was called Automated Testing for Fraidy Cats Like Me, right? And it starts out with, I've been programming for 25 years, but I've always felt really daunted by this topic. So let's go through it the way it made sense to me from my background. I loved that course. I chose not to redo it because there were so many great getting started with unit testing, et cetera, courses that had come after. So I felt the need wasn't there anymore, but I'm glad it's still in the library so that, once in a while somebody will watch it.
Let's talk about your personal Pluralsight library, because it's pretty vast. What are some of the courses that you're most proud of that you've authored? And then we'll tee up, I know you're working on a course now that's really exciting.
It was hard to leave home to come out to Utah when I'm in the middle of that course. Well, one thing that's funny about my catalog of courses is I've got also, because I've been doing it for so long and there's so many courses, I think about half of my catalog are retired courses because, they're not current technology, but they're still there for, not everybody's using bleeding edge, or, even if bleeding edge is 10 years old, you know what I mean? So they're still there if people need to find them. So the bulk of my catalog is Entity Framework and Entity Framework Core courses. A lot of the getting started courses, and now, they're fundamentals, EF Core 6 fundamentals. And also I was, some more advanced courses. And then I started learning about domain-driven design. And what's funny about putting the two together is domain-driven design is all about not thinking about the data, not worrying about that, focusing on the domain, and you write that the way you need to write it, and then you do the data persistence, right? So they have nothing to do with each other, but they still have a lot to do with each other because you want to make sure that what you wrote over here still works with whatever data persistence mechanism, such as Entity Framework, that you're using, right? So, so I started learning about that, and that's been a big thing for me, conferences and speaking and the coaching and all of that with domain-driven design. So one of the courses I did that was an EF course was Entity Framework, not even Entity Framework Core. It was called Entity Framework in the Enterprise. So it was really more big architecture ideas and things like that. I loved doing that. I love doing the beginner stuff because I really want to help people feel safe and feel like they're really learning stuff, like in that beginning part of their journey. But I also have a lot of deep experience and knowledge, which I don't get to share as much, right? So I loved doing that course. And then Stephen Smith and I did a domain-driven design fundamentals course a bunch of years ago. We're both so proud of that course. We've gotten amazing feedback on it, and then we updated it in 2020. And so now we're really proud of the new iteration of that course. It wasn't just, redoing it. We completely recreated it. And then finally, I'm getting to blend the two. So I'm doing the course that had to walk away from.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to getting back to it, although, it's good to have a little break from work. Is Entity Framework Core 6 and DDD. So it's a combination of The first idea of it was relaying how that research I'm constantly doing every time there's a new version of EF Core out. How does it, if you're designing for DDD, how does EF Core, let you take those beautifully designed models and still be able to persist them without having to go back and change your domain models to make EF Core happy, which is like, you don't want to do that. You're designing them that way for a reason. So it's actually, I'm so proud of every single module that I've created, but it's not just about the mapping, because you're using this because you've built something beautiful and it's kind of real world. So I kind of had to build something beautiful in order to demonstrate it. So I explain, kind of some of the strategic design and tactical design behind the model that I'm eventually interacting with EF Core 6. So one of the things that I just can't even believe was that I was able to make the most efficient explanation, like the first module, which is like 20 minutes, it's just it's just an overview of domain-driven design. And I've never been able to explain it so efficiently before.
Yeah.
I was really proud of that. So I'm really loving that. And, our process as we build courses is that we partner with another Pluralsight author who has great experience not only building courses and understanding the needs of the viewers, but the learners, we call them, but also he's very experienced programmer and a .NET developer, and I've been getting such great feedback from him. So each module, he'll review it and let me know if, well, you said this thing, but you didn't really set up a good flow from this point to that point or whatever. So just to make sure that the story, and that's really important to me, the storyline, right? That there's a story. So, and the feedback from him is, he said, and he's done tech review on a number of my courses. He said, this is different than your other courses. And your other courses are great, but this is different and wonderful. He was at my house. We were snowshoeing together because he was traveling, and so he came over for the afternoon. And we're out enjoying the beautiful woods in Vermont, and he still couldn't help it. He's like, I just need to tell you that. So to have that feedback from a peer is also great.
Yeah, I love talking to Pluralsight authors, and that pride of ownership, that commitment to quality over quantity. It would be really easy to kind of push out mass volumes and not necessarily think about the efficiency of those 20 minutes. But time is such a valuable commodity within the developer engineer community, and to hear you guys talking about how important it is to be efficient in the delivery of that learning, I think is really inspiring.
Thank you.
Give the audience some advice. So we recently did a state of upskilling report, and in that report, it was validated that both learners and leaders within organizations state finding time, making time for learning is the biggest barrier to progress. What advice would you give to leaders or learners who are struggling to make time for learning?
It's a really hard topic. And I also know that I personally am in a different position than a lot of people in that I don't have kids, right? That's really big. My life might be very different in respect to that. So that's really hard. So I think, a lot of times it is very important to learn the things you need to learn for your job. But I think what's also really important is kind of in feeding your I want to learn heart. And sometimes you might need to feed that by learning something else, something that you're curious about. It may not even be the leaders might not want to hear this, but it might not be the thing you need to learn for work. But by following just something you're curious about, and it makes the learning fun.
Yeah.
Like, and you can tell that from mine. I got to choose my path, right? I got to choose the things that were of interest to me, and therefore that burning desire just kind of came along. But I think if you can, I think people will always make time to follow something that their heart wants to follow, right? And by kind of feeding that, and it makes learning fun again, I think it makes it easier to take on the tasks of the things that you might need to learn that may not be calling to you, but you kind of have to.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, Steve Buchanan had an interesting take on that because he said smart leaders are understanding where the passion projects and areas of interest are for their learners and then mapping those to the outcomes that the organization wants to achieve. And I thought that was a really interesting perspective because I think the organization usually goes, what are the outcomes? What are the skills we need? And then they kind of try to force that skill development on teams versus trying to lean into the areas of interest and passion from the team and then reverse engineering.
It must be hard to I've been self-employed for so long. I mean, I work with organizations, but I don't have that deep insight into that. But making sure that there's a way to find that, like, hey, there's the person who really loves UI, but they're stuck over here. Like, maybe we can change things up.
Yeah, I think there's a great insight in that. I wanted to go off script a little bit and ask you a question because
a script?
Well, I got an iPad. That's the best I have.
Oh, okay.
But it feels like there's an interesting. I hear a lot of conversations about should I be a specialist or a generalist, and you feel like a specialist to me, like someone that has really specialized in some core areas in their career. And I just wanted your perspective on, is there a right path, or do you have advice to anyone who's maybe struggling with that question?
That is another slippery slope, right? And I also feel like my journey and where I am is very different than a lot of other people. I have met people who say, well, who are interested in creating content, conference speaking, et cetera, and a new technology will come out and they'll say, I want to be the Julie, because they really tied my, my star, what is that saying? Well, I tied myself to Entity Framework.
Your brand is.
And it wasn't intentional. It just happened because when Microsoft started talking about Entity Framework, .NET community all said, another data access platform. Yeah, let's see how long this one lasts, right? And I was just having fun learning about it because everybody was ignoring it, and it was very clear that all the work that I was presenting was my own work and my own research, and I was very proud of that. So something new will come out, and somebody will say, I want to be the Julie Lerman of ChatGPT, right? Like, I don't know that happens anymore. And also with respect to a career in software. So I think what is a better path than putting all your eggs in one basket, because that was very risky of me. And I'm not working for somebody. I'm not on a software team, right? So, what are your goals? Where are you going to be? So I can kind of afford to very much focus on these other things, but still have enough of a desire to learn some things, to be dangerous, right? Know enough to be dangerous, but recognizing that. But I think within the context of, you're in an org and you're responsible to a team, almost the same as what I was saying about learning. Like, you first make sure that there's always something that if you can find a way to work on something that makes you feel happy to work on, even if you have to work on other topics, and they're hard to learn, or it's frustrating to, it's not coming. I just keep going because of my curiosity. But I think one thing to be really, I think that is really important is to be really honest about what you do and don't know. That's really critical. Like when you're on a team, instead of, I don't think you can fake it till you make it with coding.
Yeah.
Even if you've got debugging and testing and all of those things. So that's a little trickier question for me to answer, just because I haven't lived that.
Yeah.
And I don't want to just project
that's very
onto
fair.
other people's experience.
Well, Julie, this has been awesome. We love to end with just some very random questions my social team has kind of thrown together, keep you on your toes. So if you're game, we'll throw these your way. Are you ready? Okay.
The pressure.
If you could switch legs with any animal, which would it be?
Oh, it would have to be with a dog, because, with my dog.
And what kind of dog do you have?
Oh, Josie. She's a Newfoundland.
Okay.
And she has the sweetest little feet, which I love to play with, and she lets me. So, I wouldn't mind if, she's not ticklish. I would like to do that. She does not mind being in deep snow when it's cold. I would not mind that, instead of having to layer on clothes. So,
what's your favorite thing about Vermont?
The outdoors and the constant various transitions. So we get summer, all the things we can do in the summer, in the fall, and the winter.
Yeah, I love that. We have that in Utah too, full 4 seasons.
Yeah.
Do you have a favorite pizza topping?
Am I supposed to say pineapple and piss people off?
It's definitely a hot topic if pineapple's an acceptable topping, but is that it? Is it really?
I don't really have a favorite.
Okay. That's good. You're very focused on your course, but is there anything you're learning right now, a skill set you're adding?
Yes. I've recently become quite an expert on Medicare Part D prescription insurance.
I didn't have that on my bingo card.
Oh. Well, that's called life outside of coding.
Yeah. Which happens.
It wasn't intentional, but
yeah.
I'm prepared for when I turn 65.
Well, it's a process. I've heard.
You asked.
We're here. This is raw. If you were a flavor of ice cream, what would the flavor be?
Oh, one that nobody would want to eat. I think I would want to live in that container.
I don't think that's.
Well, let's go back to what's my favorite. It's just going to be chocolate chip ice cream. Okay. Instead, can I switch that out for favorite pizza topping? Favorite ice cream, classic chocolate chip.
Classic chocolate chip.
There you go.
Very good. Well, Julie, thanks for joining us in the Pluralsight Spotlight today, and really appreciated having you here.
Thanks so much. I love doing this.
To our audience, I want to thank you for joining us as well. We'll put links to Julie's courses, any other links that we referenced in the show. We'll add those in the show notes. As always, we love your feedback. We'd love a follow, a subscription, and we'll see you next time on Pluralsight Spotlight.